She stood in church and told everyone I abandoned her. I remember thinking how easy it was for her to say that. Like the last 12 years never happened, because 12 years ago, she locked me out of the house at night with a suitcase, and now she was back, standing there like none of it mattered. But it did. So instead of staying quiet, I walked to the front and told everyone why she really came back. If this hits somewhere real for you, you can subscribe, only if it feels right. She stood in church and told everyone I abandoned her. I didn't. She put me out. That's the part no one in that room knew. Not the people turning around to look at me. Not the ones whispering behind their hands. Not even the ones already shaking their heads like they understood everything. Because they didn't. They were hearing her version, and she told it well. I've missed her every day, she said softly, standing at the front like she belonged there. But she chose to leave. A few people nodded. Someone near the aisle sighed, and just like that, the story settled. I could feel it happening. That quiet shift in the room where people decide who you are without asking a single question. I was the daughter who left, and she was the mother who stayed. I stood near the back, close to the door. I always pick seats like that now. Habit, it gives you a way out. For a second, I thought about using it, just turning around, walking out, letting her have it. It wouldn't have been the first time. 12 years is a long time to stay quiet. At first, it wasn't a choice. I was 16. You don't correct people when you're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep that night. Later, it just became easier. New town, new life. No one asking questions, no one needing answers. And eventually, you convince yourself it doesn't matter. Until it does. Gerald is very sick, she continued, her voice tightening just enough to sound real. And all I want is my family back together. There it was. The real reason. Wrapped in something softer. I felt it land across the room, people leaning forward, listening differently now. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. Now it was about sympathy, about forgiveness, about a mother asking for help. And everyone in that room wanted that to be true. That's the thing about stories like hers. People want to believe them. They want the version where everything makes sense. Where the mother is good. Where the daughter made a mistake. Where everything can still be fixed. I used to want that too. But wanting something doesn't make it real. She paused at the podium. Let the silence settle. Then she said my name. Priestley. Not loud. Just enough. If you're here, she said gently, you don't have to be alone anymore. A few people turned again. Looking for me. Waiting. Because this was the moment. The one where I was supposed to walk forward. Fix it. Make everyone comfortable again. My body almost moved. Old habit. Old instinct. Keep the peace. Don't make it worse. But then, something else came back. Cold air, that's what I remember first. Not the argument, not the shouting. The cold. It hit the second the door opened. I hadn't brought a coat downstairs. I thought I'd be going back up. I always thought I'd be going back up. Then the suitcase. Blue. Worn. One wheel slightly broken. I didn't pack it, that part matters. Because people always assume you had time, a choice. I didn't. It happened fast. Too fast to understand. 1 minute I was standing in the kitchen. The next, I was outside. And the door, I still hear it sometimes. Not slammed. Not angry, just the sound of the lock turning. Calm. Final. Like it had already been decided. I blinked. Back in the church, same room, same people. But something felt different now. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't standing outside with nowhere to go. I wasn't waiting for someone to open the door. And for the first time in 12 years, I realized something. Staying quiet doesn't protect you. I took a breath. Slow. Steady. Then I stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. Not fast, not dramatic. Just enough for people to notice. Whispers stopped. Chairs shifted. Because now, they weren't just listening, they were watching. And they didn't know yet what they were about to hear. I walked down the aisle. Felt every pair of eyes follow me. My mother saw me. For a second, just a second, her expression changed. Not fear, recognition. She knew. She knew I wasn't here to play along. I stopped a few steps from the front. Close enough to see her clearly. Close enough for her to see me, and for the first time in 12 years, I didn't look away. I didn't stay quiet. I didn't leave. I reached into my bag, felt the edge of the folder solid, real, and I realized something else. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about her. It was about the truth, finally existing somewhere outside of me. I stepped forward. Toward the front. Toward the microphone. And toward the moment that was about to change everything. I stopped just short of the stage, close enough to see her clearly, close enough to hear her breathing change. For a second, she didn't speak. That was new. My mother was never quiet unless she was thinking. And when she was thinking, it usually meant she was adjusting the story. Presley, she said again, softer this time. Like saying my name differently would somehow change what was happening. I didn't answer. I didn't look at her the way I used to. Waiting. Hoping. Trying to read what she meant instead of what she said. I just stood there. And the room waited. You could feel it. That shift from sympathy to uncertainty. Because something wasn't lining up anymore. She straightened slightly. Adjusted her grip on the microphone. I'm so glad you came, she said, voice steady again. We've all been praying for this moment. There it was. Back to control. Back to performance. I not agreeing, just acknowledging. Then I said, quietly at first, I didn't come for that. A few people leaned forward. She held her smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. What do you mean? She asked gently. Still playing it soft. Still keeping it safe. People here think I left. A pause. A real one this time, because she knew exactly what I was doing. Presley, she said, just a little firmer now. This isn't the place. It is. Not loud. Not aggressive, just certain. And that's what made it land. Another shift in the room, because now this wasn't just a reunion anymore. This was something else. I didn't leave, I said. I was 16. Someone near the front row turned fully in their seat. I didn't have a car. I added. I didn't have a plan. I let that sit. Because people understand that. They can picture it. 16. No car, no plan. She put me out. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just the truth. A murmur moved through the room low. Uncertain. My mother stepped slightly toward me. Just enough to close the distance. That's not how it happened, she said quickly. Still calm, but faster now. Too fast. I think you're remembering it differently. No, I said. And for the first time, I looked straight at her. I remember it exactly. That was the moment, not the words. The eye contact. Because for 12 years, I avoided that. It was easier not to look, easier not to confront. But there was nowhere to go. She exhaled slowly. Looked out at the room. I understand this is emotional for you, she said, and there it was. The shift, not denial, not apology, reframing, making it about me, my emotions, my confusion, not her actions. I almost smiled, because it was familiar. Gerald is very sick, she continued. As I said, we're dealing with something very serious right now. You didn't say why you came back. That landed harder than anything else I'd said. Because it cut through everything. The story, the sympathy, the performance, straight to the reason. She froze. Just for a second. And most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did, because I'd spent years watching her do this. Redirect. Control. You know why I'm here? She said carefully. We're family. No, I said. Another pause. A longer one this time. You came because you need something. A few heads turned again. Whispers, quieter now, more focused. She shook her head slightly, not fully denying it, just softening it. Fair. That word. I let it sit for a second, then I said, "Was it fair when I knocked on the door?" Silence. Because no one in that room had heard that part before. "I knocked," I said, "more than once." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't rush it. I thought maybe it was a mistake. A woman in the second row lowered her eyes. "I thought maybe you'd open it." My mother didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't correct me. Because she couldn't. "There was a light on," I said. "I could see it under the door. The room was still. And I waited. I stopped there. Because sometimes you don't need to say everything. People fill in the rest." She stepped back slightly, just a fraction, and that's when I knew the room wasn't hers anymore, not fully. She tried again. "Presley, we can talk about this later?" "No," I said, still calm, still steady. "But you didn't." That line landed deeper than anything else. Because it wasn't about the night. It was about everything after it. You didn't call. I felt it tighten in my chest as I said it. But I didn't stop. You didn't come looking for me. Someone in the back shifted in their seat. You didn't ask where I was. Her lips parted. But no words came out. "And now you're here." I took a breath. "In front of everyone?" I glanced around the room, talking about family, then back at her. "So tell them why you really came back." There it was. The question. Clear, simple, no way around it, and for the first time, she didn't answer. Not immediately, because there are some truths you can't soften, some reasons you can't dress up, and this one was sitting right between us. Unsaid, but understood. I reached into my bag, not pulling anything out yet, just enough for her to see the folder. Her eyes dropped to it, then back to me, and something shifted. Not fear, not yet, but something close. Because she knew this wasn't going to stay her version anymore. And the room was starting to realize it too. No one spoke. That kind of silence doesn't happen often. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't curiosity. It was tension. The kind that builds when people realize they're about to hear something they weren't supposed to. My mother stood there, still holding the microphone, but she wasn't using it anymore. For the first time since I walked in, she didn't control the room. "I did, Presley," she said quietly, leaning slightly toward me. "We don't need to do this here." Her voice had changed. Less performance, more pressure. That was new. I shook my head. "You already did it here?" A few people shifted in their seats, because that was true. She chose the place, the audience. The moment. All I was doing was finishing it. She exhaled slowly, looked out at the room again, trying to find her footing. "Gerald is very ill," she said, this time louder. Back on the microphone. Back to the version that worked. "Some of you already know. They don't know everything." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step closer. But I didn't let her take it back either. Her hand tightened slightly around the microphone. "Presley, please?" No. That word didn't echo. It landed. Clear, final. And something shifted again. Because people weren't just listening to her anymore. They were watching me. Waiting. Trying to understand which version made sense. "You said he's sick," I continued. "That part might be true." A ripple moved through the room. "But that's not why you came back." There it was. The line from the title. The one everything had been building toward. And now, it was out in the open. My mother didn't answer. Not right away. Because this wasn't something she could soften. "You came back," I said. "Because you need something from me." Her jaw tightened. "That's not fair," she said quickly. "Fair, again. Always that word." I took a small breath. "Then say it." Silence. "Say why you're here." The room held still. Someone near the back whispered something I couldn't hear. But it didn't matter. Because now, everyone was focused on one thing, her answer. She looked at me, then away, then back again, calculating, and I recognized that look. It was the same look she had that night. The one right before everything changed. "We're family," she said finally. Soft. Careful. "What, take care of each other?" It sounded right. That was the problem. It sounded right, if you didn't know the truth. "That's not what you did," I said. Not angry, not loud, just clear. "And that's not why you're here." Her expression cracked slightly, just enough. Because she knew she was running out of room, I reached into my bag again. This time, I pulled the folder out. Not opening it yet. Just holding it. That was enough. People noticed. You could feel it. That shift from listening to watching closely, because now, this wasn't just words anymore. This was proof. "What's that?" she asked quickly. Too quickly, I didn't answer her. Instead, I looked out at the room. "I didn't plan to do this today," I said. And that was true. I wasn't going to say anything. A few people nodded slightly, because that made sense. But when someone tells your story for you, I paused. You don't really get a choice anymore. I opened the folder. Slowly, not for drama, just to make sure every movement meant something. Inside, paper, plain, simple, but real, was 16, I said. And just like that, the room went quiet again. November. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. It was cold. A woman near the front shifted in her seat, because now, they were picturing it. "That night," I said, "I didn't leave." I glanced up. I was put out. No reaction from my mother this time, because she couldn't interrupt now, not without making it worse. "I knocked," I said. I let that sit. I waited. Another pause, and no one opened the door. The words were simple. That's what made them heavy. No exaggeration, no drama. Just something people could understand. I lifted one page slightly from the folder. Not showing it yet. Just enough for people to see it existed. "This?" I said. "Quiet night." My mother's face changed, not completely, but enough, because now, this wasn't a story anymore. This was something that could be checked. Verified. Proven. "You're doing this for attention," she said suddenly. The words came out sharper than before. Desperate. And that was the first real crack, because people heard it, and they recognized it. That shift from calm to defensive. I shook my head slowly. "If I wanted attention," I said, "I would have spoken 12 years ago." Silence. Real silence. Because that line landed exactly where it needed to. I didn't. I continued. Because I didn't need anyone to believe me. I looked down at the paper in my hand. Then back up. "But now you're asking them to." That changed everything. Because now, this wasn't just about the past. It was about right now. Her story. Her reason. "You didn't come back to fix anything," I said. And now, my voice dropped slightly, not louder. More focused. "You came back because you need something from me." The room held its breath. "And this time," I added quietly, "I'm not the 16-year-old standing outside that door." No one moved, no one spoke. Because they were waiting. Waiting for the part she hadn't said. Waiting for the reason. Waiting for the truth. I looked at her. And for the first time, she didn't look like she had control anymore. She looked like someone who had run out of versions. I held the paper in my hand and said, "So tell them." A pause. "Or I will." I didn't wait for her to answer, because I already knew she wouldn't. People like her don't say the truth unless they have no other option left. So I gave her one. I stepped forward, reached for the microphone. She reacted immediately. Her hand tightened around it. Presley. Took it from her. Not forcefully. Just firmly. The room went completely still. I could feel it. Every eye, every breath. Waiting. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I said. That part mattered. Because it was true. I'm here because what was just said isn't what happened. A few people shifted. I opened the folder. Paper against paper. That soft sound carried more weight than anything else in that room. I was 16, I said. No pause, no build. November 14th. I looked down. Read it exactly how it was written. Cedar Valley Regional Hospital. A ripple. Because now this wasn't memory, it was record. Patient Presley Dixon. Didn't dramatize. Chief complaint, right wrist contusion. Someone in the front row frowned. Notes. Patient states she was grabbed by stepfather during a domestic dispute. Silence. Heavy now. Minor brought in by neighbor. I lifted my head. No parent present. That landed. Not loud, but deep. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't need to, because the room was already doing that. Someone whispered. This, I said calmly. Ease from the night I supposedly left. My mother stepped forward. That's not. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't interrupt her. I just kept reading. Temperature recorded that night, 38 degrees. A woman near the aisle shook her head slowly. I wasn't wearing a coat. Now I looked up, because I wasn't planning on leaving. No one moved. No one spoke, because now they could see it, not imagine, see it, a 16-year-old girl standing outside, at night, in the cold, with a suitcase I didn't pack. My voice didn't change. That was the point. Truth doesn't need volume. My mother's voice broke in, sharper now. I turned to her. Then correct me? Silence. Because she couldn't. You said I left. I took one step closer. So tell them when I came back inside. Nothing. Her mouth opened, then closed. No version, no adjustment, no control. Gone. I turned back to the room. This is the part she didn't tell you. I closed the file halfway, not hiding it just enough, because now, they were listening. Really listening. And this? I said quietly. Still isn't the reason she came back. That shifted everything again, because now, there was more. My mother froze. That line hit her harder than the rest. Presley, she said, voice thinner now. We can talk about this privately. No. Simple. Clear. You had 12 years to talk privately. A few people nodded, without realizing it. I tried. That was new. That part she never expected. I called. I let that, sir? I wrote. Another pause. The letter came back unopened. A man in the second row leaned back slowly. Because now, this wasn't one moment. This was a pattern. You didn't want a daughter, I said. Still calm. You wanted silence. That one landed differently. Because it explained everything. My mother shook her head. That's not true. Then why now? No hesitation. No pause. Why after 12 years are you here? The room tightened, because now, everyone knew. This was the real question. Not the past. Not the story. The reason, she didn't answer. Her fingers trembled slightly. Small. But that's when I knew. She wasn't deciding what to say. She was deciding what she could still hide. I stepped closer to the microphone, lowered my voice just enough. So I'll say it for you. That was the moment. The one everything had been building toward. The one she came here to avoid. And the one no one in that room saw coming. You didn't come back because you missed me. Silence. You came back. I stopped. Just for a second. Because timing matters. Because you need something from me. The words didn't echo. They dropped. Heavy. Final. And this time, no one looked at me. They all looked at her. Because now, it wasn't my story anymore. It was hers to answer, and she had nothing left. No one helped her this time. No one spoke for her. No one filled the silence. Because now, they were waiting for her to explain it. And she couldn't. Not the way she used to. Not with a room full of people who had just heard something real. Presley, she said again. But there was nothing behind it now. No control. No direction. just a name. I didn't move. I didn't soften. I didn't step back into that space she had always kept me in. I just stood there and let her try. Gerald is sick, she said finally. The same line, but it didn't land the same way anymore, because now it sounded like an excuse. Not a reason. I already said that, I replied. Calm, but that's not why you came back. She swallowed, and for the first time, she looked small, not weak, just exposed, because the story she had prepared didn't work anymore. He has leukemia, she said. A few people shifted again. Because that word still carries weight. It always does. And the treatment isn't working. She looked around the room, looking for sympathy, looking for something to hold on to. But it wasn't the same. Not after everything that had just been said. We've tried everything, she continued, and her voice started to crack, real this time, or closer to it. And the doctors said. She stopped. That was the line. The one she didn't want to say out loud. Because once she said it, there was no going back. I didn't help her. I didn't interrupt. I just waited. She said it. He needs a bone marrow transplant. There it was, clear, simple, and suddenly, everything made sense. The timing. The performance. All of it. And you think that's me? I said. Not a question. Just a statement, she nodded quickly. You're the only possible match in the family. Family. That word again. Used when it was convenient. Ignored when it wasn't. And that's why you're here, I said. No emotion, no hesitation. You need my bone marrow. A few people inhaled quietly. Because now, it wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about my body, my choice. My life. Yes, she said, finally, honest. But only because she had no other option left. And we don't have time, she added quickly. There it was again, pressure, urgency, the same tactic, just dressed differently. You expect me to do this, I said slowly. After 12 years of silence. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm your mother. And that was her answer, not an explanation, not an apology, just a title, like it should be enough. It wasn't. You stopped being my mother the night you locked that door, I said, quiet, but final. The room didn't react loudly, but you could feel it. That shift again, because people understood that line, even if they didn't say it. You don't mean that, she said quickly. I didn't respond. Because I did, and it's not just that, she added, too fast, trying to regain control again. We're behind on the bills. There it was, the second part, the part she hadn't planned to say. The transplant, she continued. It's expensive. I nodded once. How much? She hesitated. Then, 300,000, maybe more. A few people reacted, not loudly, but enough. Because now, this wasn't just about saving someone. It was about money, a lot of it. And the house is in foreclosure, she added quietly. There it was. The full picture, not just illness, collapse. And you thought, I said, you could come back here. I let that sit. Tell everyone I abandoned you. Another pause. And then ask me to save everything. She shook her head quickly. That's not what this is. It is. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You didn't come back for me. Silence. You came back because you ran out of options. That line hit harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional. It was logical, and logic is harder to argue with. I had nowhere else to go, she said. And for the first time, that part sounded real, not controlled, not rehearsed, just honest. But it was too late. Because honesty doesn't erase history. It doesn't undo 12 years. It doesn't unlock doors that were already closed. I looked at her. Really looked this time. And I saw it. Not just the performance. Not just the manipulation. But the reality behind it. She didn't come back because she wanted to. She came back because she had to. And there's a difference. A big one. I'm not saying no, I said finally. That caught her off guard. A few people in the room shifted again, because they didn't expect that. But I'm not saying yes either. I stepped back slightly. This isn't a decision you get to control. Her face changed, confusion. Then something else, fear. You don't understand. I understand exactly. This is my body. A pause. My choice. Another pause. And you don't get to stand in a room full of people. I looked around briefly, and turned it into pressure. Silence. Heavy now, because everyone felt that, whether they agreed or not, they understood it. And the money. I added. That part. She didn't want to talk about. You think I'm going to fix that too? She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Not honestly, I nodded once. That's what I thought. I closed the folder, not slowly, not dramatically. Just done. This is the real reason she came back, I said to the room. No emotion, no performance, just the truth. And now you know. No one clapped. No one spoke. Because this wasn't that kind of moment. This was something else. Something quieter. Something heavier. And something that, once heard, couldn't be undone. I stepped back. And for the first time since I walked in, I wasn't standing in her story anymore. I was standing in mine. No one moved at first. That was the strangest part, not anger, not outrage, just stillness. Like the room needed a second to understand what it had just heard. Then, it started. A chair shifted. Someone whispered, she didn't leave. I thought, 16. The words spread quietly. But they didn't stop. And just like that, the room wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to the truth. I stayed where I was, not stepping back, not looking away, because this time, I wasn't the one standing outside the door. My mother didn't move. Still at the front, still holding herself together, but something had changed. Not obvious, not loud, but there. The way her shoulders held tension, the way her eyes moved faster now, looking, searching for something she'd already lost. Colleen, Mrs. Henderson, front row, soft voice. Eyes that true. No accusation, no anger, just a question. And somehow, that made it worse, because questions don't disappear, they sit there, waiting. My mother at the room. It's more complicated than that, she said. There it was. Not truth, not denial, just distance. You said she left. A man said from the side. You said she walked out. Another shift. Because now, it wasn't just me, now it was everyone. I didn't lie, she said quickly. Too quickly. I just didn't explain everything. A few people exchanged looks. Because that wasn't the same thing. You let us believe she abandoned you, Mrs. Henderson said, still calm, still measured, but firm. And that landed. Because calm truth is harder to ignore than loud emotion. My mother didn't answer. She couldn't. Not without making it worse. From the back. Another voice. You asked us to call her, Deacon Harris, arms folded now. You said she wouldn't speak to you. More whispers. More doubt. And I felt it. That shift. Not loud. But permanent. For 12 years, she didn't lose her daughter, she lost control over her, and now, everyone could see it. You don't understand what we've been through, she said, her voice rising slightly. The calm was slipping. Gerald is dying, and you needed her. A woman in the middle rows, simple. Direct. No emotion, just truth. My mother froze. Because now, it wasn't just my voice anymore, it was the room. And that's something you can't control. I needed help, she said. Quieter now. And for the first time, that part sounded real. But it didn't change anything. Because truth doesn't erase history. Mrs. Henderson looked down briefly, then back up. You should have told us the whole story. Not angry. Disappointed, and disappointment cuts deeper. My mother's eyes filled. But now, it didn't work the same way. Because people had already seen past it. I didn't know what to do, she said. And maybe, that part was honest. But it came too late. I watched her carefully, not reacting, just seeing her clearly, for the first time, without confusion, without hope, just clarity. A man near the aisle stood up. "I donated to that fund," he said. The room stilled again. Because now, this wasn't just emotional, now it was real. "Are we helping with medical costs?" he continued. "Or something else?" There it was. Trust, money, truth, all at once. My mother shook her head quickly. "No, of course not." But her voice didn't carry anymore, because once trust breaks, everything sounds different, even the truth. Pastor Whitfield stepped forward, slow, careful, trying to steady the room. "That's enough," he said gently. But no one moved. Because once people start seeing clearly, they don't go back. "She made it the place," I said, not loud. "But enough. Because that part mattered." He paused. Because he knew it was true. "I think we need to step back," he said. But the room didn't. Not really. Because something had already changed. My mother stepped away from the podium, just slightly, but enough. And that was it, that moment. The one where everything shifted. Not dramatic, not loud, just final. She wasn't in control anymore. And everyone knew it. I picked up my bag. Not leaving. Just ready. Because I didn't need to say anything else. Not right now. The truth was already moving, and it didn't need me anymore. I stayed where I was. Not hiding. Not stepping back. And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel like I had to defend anything. I just stood there and let the room see her. Clearly, she didn't cry right away. That's what I noticed first. For someone who always knew exactly when to cry, she didn't. She just stood there, looking at the room, like she was trying to understand when it stopped being hers. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Control doesn't break loudly. It slips. A pause too long. A sentence that doesn't land. A room that doesn't respond the way it used to. And she felt it. I could see it in the way her hands moved, then stopped, like she didn't know what to do with them anymore. "Colleen," Pastor Whitfield stepped closer. "We should talk about this privately." That would have worked before. But not now. Because the room had already seen too much. "No," she said, soft, but different. "I'll say it." A few people shifted, not expecting that. Not anymore. She took a breath, a real one this time. Not controlled, not measured. And when she tried to speak, her voice didn't break, it failed. But everyone saw it. "I didn't tell the whole truth," she said, silence. "I let people believe she left. No movement. No whisper. Because now, they weren't guessing anymore. They were listening. Really listening. I didn't know how to explain what happened," she continued, her voice uneven now. "And then time passed." She paused. Like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. She found out about the money. That shifted the room again, because now, there was a reason. Not just what happened, but why. I didn't interrupt. This part needed to come from her. "Gerald," she said quietly. He took it. A murmur. Small, but sharp. "Her college fund." That landed. Because people understood that. Money saved for a future. Gone. "I thought he would fix it," she said, her eyes dropping now. "He said he would. But then Presley found out." She looked at me. Just for a second, then away again. And everything escalated. That word again. Soft. Careful. Wrong. I didn't correct her. Not yet. "I panicked," she said. "I didn't know what to do." Her voice cracked slightly. "And I let it go too far." That was as close as she could get. Not, "I did it." Not, "I chose it." Just, "It happened." People noticed. Because now, they were hearing what she avoided. She didn't leave. Someone whispered. She was thrown out. The word spread again. Heavier this time. Because now, they were putting it together themselves. I stepped forward slightly. Not aggressive. Just present. I didn't raise my voice. I said quietly. But my chest felt tight. That was the truth. She didn't lose her daughter. The room stilled again. She chose not to have one. That line cut clean. No anger, no emotion, just clarity. My mother closed her eyes briefly, like she needed a second to stand there. I didn't know how to fix it, she said. And this time, it sounded smaller, not defensive, not controlled. Just tired. But you didn't try, I said. Not harsh. You didn't call. She didn't answer. You didn't come looking. Still nothing. You didn't open the letter I sent. That one landed, because now, it wasn't just what she did, it was what she didn't do. Her eyes dropped, and that told everyone everything. I thought, she started, then stopped, because whatever came next wouldn't help her. I thought it was better this way. That was the most honest thing she had said, because it explained everything. Not right, not fair, but real. Silence settled again, not sharp, not tense. Because now, there was nothing left to hide, no version, no angle, just the truth. I looked at her, not with anger, not with anything I used to feel, just clarity. Because now, I understood something I didn't before. She didn't come back to fix what she broke. She came back because something else broke, and she needed me to fix it. That was the difference. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. I'm not the solution to your life, I said quietly. No reaction, no interruption, because there wasn't anything left to argue. And I'm not the problem you told everyone I was. That wasn't for her. That was for the room. And they understood. You could see it in their faces. Not sympathy, not judgment, recognition. Because everyone has seen something like this. Maybe not this exact story, but close enough. I stepped back. Not leaving. Just done. Because there wasn't anything else to say. Not anymore. And for the first time since I walked into that church, no one was waiting for me to speak. They were looking at her, and she had nothing left. No one rushed to her. That's what made it real. Not the silence. Not the looks. The distance. People stayed where they were. A few minutes ago, they would have stepped forward. Offered comfort, support. Now, they didn't. They just watched, and that was the shift. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just clear. My mother stood there at the front. No microphone now. No words. Just a person in a room that no longer believed her. She looked smaller, not physically, but in the way people saw her. And that changes everything. A woman in the second row leaned toward another. Why didn't she say anything before? A quiet question. But it carried. Because it didn't have an answer. A man near the aisle shook his head slowly. That girl was 16. Not loud. But enough, because now, they weren't reacting to a story. They were reacting to a person. Me. And what had been done. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Because this part wasn't about me anymore. It was about what people do when the truth settles. And the truth doesn't shout, it stays. A chair scraped. The man who had spoken about the donation earlier stepped forward. Not angry. Just direct. I'd like to know where that money is going. There it was again. Not emotion. Accountability, and that's harder to escape. My mother looked at him. Then at the pastor. Then back at the room. I told you. But her voice didn't carry. Not the way it used to. Because once trust breaks, people stop filling in the gaps for you. You didn't tell us everything, Mrs. Henderson said, standing now. Not confrontational, but steady. And you asked us to help. Another pause. And we did. That line landed differently. Because now, it wasn't just about sympathy, it was about being missiled. And people don't like that. I didn't mean to. My mother started. But she didn't finish. Because even she knew that sentence wasn't enough. I watched her. Not with anger. Not with anything heavy. Just distance. Because for the first time, I wasn't inside her version of things. I was outside it. And it looked different from here. A woman near the back spoke up. Maybe we should pause the fundraiser. The room stilled again. Because that was real. That had consequences. "That's not necessary," my mother said quickly, too quickly, and people noticed. Because urgency means something is at risk. And now, they were starting to see what. Pastor Whitfield stepped forward again. This time, he didn't hesitate. "I think that's a fair suggestion," he said. Calm, measured. "But until we have clarity," he looked at my mother briefly. "We should hold off." That was it. Not dramatic, but final. Because it changed everything. The fundraiser wasn't just an event anymore. It was a question. And people don't donate to questions. They donate to trust. And trust was gone. A few people began to step back. Not leaving yet. Just creating space. The kind of space that doesn't come back easily. My mother looked around, and I saw it. That moment. The one where she realized this wasn't something she could fix in the room. Not with words. Not with tears. Not anymore. Her shoulders dropped slightly, just enough. And for the first time, she didn't try to recover. She didn't explain. She didn't redirect. She just stood there, and that was the collapse. Not loud. Not emotional. Just absence. The absence of control. The absence of belief. I picked up my bag, not in a rush. Just ready to leave. Because I had said what I came to say, and the rest wasn't mine anymore. As I turned, a voice stopped me. "Presley." I paused, turned slightly. Her expression had changed completely now. Softer. But not out of pity. Out of understanding. "I'm sorry," she said, simple. No explanation. No justification. Just that. And that mattered, because it wasn't forced. It wasn't for the room. It was real. I nodded once. "Thank you." Another man approached. The one who mentioned the donation. "If you ever need anything," he said, "you let me know." I didn't respond right away. Because that kind of offer doesn't come from obligation. It comes from seeing something clearly. That I said, and I meant it. A few more people nodded as I passed. No big gestures, no dramatic reactions. Just quiet acknowledgement. And that was enough. Because I wasn't looking for support. I wasn't looking for validation. I just wanted the truth to exist outside of me. And now, it did. I stepped toward the exit, each step lighter than the last. Not because something had been fixed, but because something had been set down. Behind me, the room was still shifting, people talking, quiet conversations, questions that wouldn't go away, and at the front, my mother. Still alone. But not because I left her. Because the story she built couldn't hold anymore. I reached the door, pushed it open. The air outside felt different, cooler, clearer. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was carrying anything. Not the past. Not her version of it. Just myself. And that was enough. The parking lot felt different. Quieter than it should have been. Like the world had moved on, but I hadn't yet. I walked a few steps away from the door, stopped. Not because I needed to, but because my body hadn't caught up. Everything inside me was still settling, not shaking, not heavy, just shifting. The door opened behind me. Presley? Ruth, I turned. She was already walking toward me, same steady pace, same calm presence. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She had been there. "You okay?" she said. I nodded. "Yeah." And this time, I meant it. She studied my face for a second, then gave a small nod. "Good." We stood there. No rush. No pressure to speak, because some moments don't need words. Behind us, the door opened again. Voices spilled out. "I didn't know." "Wow, that changes everything." "She told us something else." I didn't turn. I didn't need to hear it. Because I already knew. The truth had landed, and once it does, it doesn't need help. The door opened again, slower. I knew before I looked. My mother. She stepped outside. And stopped. Like she wasn't sure where she belonged now. That was new. No audience, no stage, just space. She looked at me. And for the first time, there was no version behind her eyes. No story. No control, just certainty. You didn't have to do that, she said. Her voice was low. Not defensive. Not sharp. Just tired. I held her gaze. I didn't have to stay quiet either. She nodded slightly. Like she understood that part. Or maybe, like she couldn't argue with it anymore. A long pause. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. That sentence said more than she meant. Because it wasn't about what happened. It was about what she expected. She expected control. She expected the room to follow her. She didn't expect me to change it. You didn't think I'd say anything, I replied. Not a question. Just truth. She didn't deny it. Because she couldn't. Another pause said, she added quietly, about Gerald. There it was again. Back to the reason. Back to the need. I know, I said. And I did. That part was real. But real doesn't make it right. And I meant what I said too. She looked at me, like she was waiting for something more, something softer, something that would let her step closer again. I'm still your mother, she said. There it was, the last thing she had. The one line she thought still mattered. I didn't react right away, because I had heard that line before, just not like this, not after everything. You didn't come back for me, I said, quiet, clear. You came back because you had no one else left. That landed. Not loudly, but completely. Her face changed, not defensive, not angry, just still, because there was nothing left to say against that. I had nowhere else to go, she said. And that was the first fully honest thing she had said, but honesty doesn't erase what came before it. I'm not saying no, I said. That caught her off guard. But I'm not saying yes because you asked. She watched me carefully now, trying to understand what was left. I continued, who'll be through my doctor, a pause, on my terms. She nodded quickly. Too quickly. Of course. That's all I'm asking. No, firm. That's not all you were asking. Silence. Because she knew. The money, the house, everything else tied to it. That part is done, I said. No anger, no explanation, just a boundary, and boundaries don't need to be argued. She looked down. And for the first time, she didn't try to fix it. Didn't try to control it. I'll wait, she said quietly, and that was different. No pressure, no performance, just waiting. I nodded once. That was enough. Not forgiveness, not closure, just distance, clear, defined. Ruth shifted beside me. Ready? She asked. I looked at her. Then back at my mother. Standing there, not at the center of anything anymore, not controlling anything. Just there. And for the first time, I didn't feel pulled toward her. I didn't feel responsible. I didn't feel like I had to fix anything. I'm ready. We walked toward the car, step by step, no weight behind us, no unfinished sentence, just movement. As I reached the car, I paused. Not because I wanted to. I turned back once. She was still there. Standing in the same spot, watching. But not calling out, not reaching, because now there was nothing left she could use to pull me back. Before, she had the story. Now she didn't. And that changed everything. I got into the car, closed the door, and as the engine started, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't leaving anything behind. Because nothing there belonged to me anymore. I wasn't the version she told people I was. I wasn't the problem she needed me to be, and I wasn't the solution she came back for. I was just myself, and for the first time, that was enough. The drive home was quiet, not the heavy kind of quiet, not the kind that sits on your chest, just still. Ruth didn't turn on the radio. She didn't ask questions, she just drove. Hands steady on the wheel, like she understood. This wasn't something that needed to be filled. I leaned back in the seat, watched the road stretch out ahead, streetlights passing one by one. And for the first time in a long time, my mind wasn't racing. It wasn't replaying anything. It wasn't trying to fix something that had already happened. It was just quiet. "You did good," Ruth said finally. I glanced at her. She didn't look over, just kept her eyes on the road. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You told the truth," she replied. Simple. Like that explained everything, and maybe it did. We pulled into my driveway a few minutes later. The porch light was still on. I had left it that way, not for anyone else, just for myself. Ruth parked, turned off the engine. Neither of us moved right away, because endings don't always feel like endings. Sometimes they feel like space. "You staying the night?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "Of course I am." That made me smile too. We got out of the car, walked inside. The house felt the same. Nothing had changed. And somehow, everything had. Ruth went to the kitchen, like she always did, opening cabinets like she lived there. I stood in the living room for a moment, just taking it in. The quiet, the space, the absence of something I had carried for years. I walked over to the bookshelf. The folder was still there, right where it had always been. I picked it up, held it for a second. Not anymore. Just paper, just proof. Just something that used to mean more than it does now. I opened it, the ER record, the statement, the letter. Everything that had once felt like it needed to be said. Now, it already had been. I closed the folder, slid it back into place. Not hiding it, just done with it. Food's on. Ruth called from the kitchen, like nothing had happened, and that felt right. I walked in. She had already started plating something simple. Toast, eggs. The kind of meal that doesn't try to be anything more than it is. We sat down at the table. No deep talk. Just small things, normal things, and I realized that's what I had been missing. Not answers, not closure, just normal. After dinner, Ruth went to the guest room, same one she always used. I cleaned up slowly, not because it needed to be done, because I wanted to move through something simple, something quiet. When everything was done, I turned off the kitchen light, walked down the hallway, past the closed doors. At the empty room, the one I never used, I stood there for a second, looking at the door, thinking about all the reasons I never opened it, all the versions of later I had told myself. I pushed it open. The room was exactly the same, bare, unfinished, waiting. But not for her. Not anymore. I stepped inside, walked to the window, pulled the curtain back. Light from the street came in softly, enough to see the space clearly. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something open. Something I could decide, not something I was holding on to. I turned around, looked at the room again, and made a decision. Simple. Final. This space wasn't for her. It never needed to be. It was for me. I closed the door, not as an ending, but as a choice. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still. Ruth was already in the kitchen, coffee ready, like always. We sat together, sunlight coming through the window, nothing heavy between us. Just presence. "Thinking about doing something with that room," I said. She nodded. "Good." No questions, no suggestions, just support, and that was enough. Later that day, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I looked at it. For a second, I thought about answering. Then I didn't. I turned the screen off, set it down, and let it be. Because not every call needs a response. Not every connection needs to be rebuilt. Some things are better left exactly where they are. I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool, quiet, familiar, but not the same. Because I wasn't the same. I wasn't standing there waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping for something to change. I wasn't trying to go back. I was just there, present, whole, and that was enough. I looked down the street, then back at the house, at the life I had built. Without her. And I understood something clearly. For the first time. Family isn't the person who closes the door on you. It's the people who leave it open. And sometimes, it's the one you open for yourself. If you've ever had someone rewrite your story, or walk back into your life only when they needed something, you already understand. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your body. And you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that only exists to make their life easier. Some doors close. Some stay open. And some you decide, for yourself,